As winter deepened, my wife and I moved into our new home in Brighton with our son. The salty sea breeze hit our faces as we arrived. To our surprise, we bumped into my aunt's family just outside the building. They stared at us with complex expressions, and my aunt immediately asked when I would be able to let go of the past and return home to have a proper chat with Bronte Carlyle, the heiress of the Carlyle Group. Bronte was my first love from university. 5 years ago, we had planned to get married. But on my birthday, she suddenly changed. In the dim lights of a pub, she smashed the gift I had carefully prepared right in front of me and left with Crispin Neville, her university roommate's brother. Furious, I immediately broke up with her and packed my bags to move to this small seaside town of Brighton. Now, upon this unexpected reunion, my aunt sighed and tried to persuade me. Bronte has never really gotten over you. On the day of her engagement to Crispin, she said she'd be willing to start over with you if you'd just come back to her. Start over? I gave a faint smile and calmly replied, Aunt, I got married 3 years ago. My son is 2 now. Bronte probably thought I was still holding a grudge against her, not knowing I had long since turned a new page in my life. Ding! Story Shots reminds you to click the subscribe button at the bottom right corner to read the full novel. I never told my family back home about my marriage. So when I ran into my aunt in Brighton, she was completely in the dark. Snowflakes fell like cotton, and I walked under an umbrella at the street corner, carrying a remote-controlled car I'd bought for my son, passing by the seafront promenade. From a distance, I saw my aunt and cousin standing there, looking at me with utter shock. After 5 years without seeing each other, my aunt's first words were reproachful. Ewart, where on earth have you been hiding all these years? Not a word, not even a phone call. I glanced at her coldly, my face as icy as the weather, showing no warmth at the reunion. In contrast, my aunt and cousin were as excited as if they'd discovered buried treasure. My cousin spoke eagerly. Ewart, you've finally shown up. Bronte Carlyle has been looking for you all these years. Come back with us. Quick! My aunt chimed in. That's right, Ewart. You don't know, Bronte Carlyle is now in charge of the family business, making quite a name for herself in the circle. If you two got back together, you'd be the envy of everyone as the son-in-law of a wealthy family. Our family could benefit too, don't you think? My aunt was beaming, and my cousin looked expectant, fantasizing about how one person's success could elevate the whole family. The irony was they had never cared about me before. After my parents passed away, they cut off contact, treating me like a stranger. Now that they saw potential value in me, they were as warm as long-lost relatives. I let out a cold laugh, interrupting their fantasies. Bronte Carlyle and I have been over for a long time. Mentioning this long-buried name, my tone was as indifferent as if I were discussing today's weather, as if she were just an insignificant passerby. My aunt and cousin were stunned, falling silent for a moment before eyeing me strangely. Clearly, they couldn't believe I could be so nonchalant. After all, my infatuation with Bronte Carlyle had been the talk of the entire university back then. They used to gossip behind my back, saying that the Quayle boy, without parents to guide him, was always causing trouble, just a reckless lad making mischief everywhere. During our university days, I was inseparable from Bronte Carlyle of the Carlyle Group. In secondary school, I had a bold personality, and those idle gossips never made me frown. It was only in our first year at university when Bronte and I became an item that I knew she would be my lifelong companion. That's why I was always clinging to her. I drag her to football matches and stay up late helping her prepare for debate competitions. From the time we met at 17 until we were 21, we were practically joined at the hip. If not for an unfortunate incident, we should have been engaged by the time we were 25. Sadly, during that summer holiday, Bronte's university flatmate's brother, Crispin Neville, came to stay at her house. Crispin was shy and refined, with gentle manners, the perfect gentleman in others' eyes. Standing next to me, he seemed like the more suitable match for her. And I was too rash. It was indeed how someone my age should be, but not how someone by her side should be. Just a wild lad with no parents to keep him in check. How could he compare to the Neville boy's composure? These whispers reached my ears, leaving me angry and ashamed. I wanted to confront Bronte to ask if she also thought I wasn't good enough. But when I arrived at the agreed open-air pub, I found Crispin was there too. He smiled gently. "Mr. Carlyle, I was bored during the holiday, so Bronte brought me out for a bit of fun. You don't mind, do you?" Normally, I wouldn't have cared, but that day was my birthday. Bronte had promised to celebrate with me, yet she casually handed my gift, a hand-carved wooden ring, to Crispin. I stared at the wooden ring on Crispin's hand, remembering the nights I'd spent polishing it, and my heart felt like it was on fire. "Bronte, what exactly do you mean by this?" The pub was noisy, with the sea breeze carrying the smell of alcohol. My sudden outburst startled her. She frowned, glancing at Crispin, then pulled me outside and said in a low voice, "He had nothing to do during the holiday, so I brought him out for some fresh air." "Why are you overreacting like this?" I didn't know why I was so upset. Perhaps it was because I'd heard too many praises for Crispin and criticisms of myself lately. Or maybe it was the wooden ring that hurt me. I gripped her sleeve, trying to contain my anger, and asked, "Then why did you give him the ring I carved?" Bronte was taken aback, a flash of panic crossing her face as she defended herself. "I just let him try it on for fun." I sneered. "For fun? Then why didn't you buy him a new one?" She said, "As if I'd really give him something you gave me." This somewhat calmed me down. I snorted, still not satisfied, and asked again, "So do you also think I'm not good enough?" She retorted, "Think what?" I said, "That I'm not mature and sensible enough." She paused, then said flatly, "Sometimes you can be a bit noisy." I glared at her angrily, raising my hand to pat her shoulder. The force wasn't great, and she didn't make a sound, but Crispin's face turned red. He looked particularly docile. He hurriedly squeezed between us, grabbing Bronte's arm, and said pitifully, "Bronte, are you all right? It's all my fault for making Mr. Carlyle angry. If he wants to blame someone, he should blame me. Don't let him get angry with you." He stood in the middle apologizing, drawing curious glances from a few people in the pub. It was a textbook love triangle drama. I frowned, wanting to tell him to stop the act, but his voice grew louder. Helplessly, Bronte had to ask a waiter to take him aside to rest. But Crispin clung to her hand, refusing to let go. She turned to me helplessly and said, "Ewart, let's call it a day. Crispin's just returned to the country and hasn't adjusted yet. I need to settle him in first." And so, the birthday gathering I had been looking forward to ended before I could even finish a single drink. From that moment on, Bronte Carlyle's leisure time no longer belonged to me. Crispin Neville's presence became increasingly frequent by her side. After the birthday incident, when I wanted to invite her out alone, I had to do it secretly, fearing Crispin might find out. Bloody hell, had I become the one having an affair? With a fire burning in my chest, I finally couldn't hold back and vented to her at the seaside cafe. "Don't you think we're acting like we're having a secret love affair?" I asked. Bronte, who was holding a cup of cappuccino, nearly spilled the foam as her hand trembled at my words. Her fair cheeks flushed slightly, and her eyes darted around as she said in a low voice, "What nonsense are you talking about?" I stared at her intently and said seriously, "I'm not talking nonsense. According to our original agreement, I should have proposed to you last year. But now I have to sneak around like a thief just to see you. Tell me, if I were to propose to you right now, would you accept?" This was indeed a glaring reality. Bronte sighed softly, reached out to ruffle my hair, pulled me closer, and after a moment of contemplation, she said, "Since you're so concerned about this, I'll bring up our relationship with my family first. Once they approve, you won't have to worry about Crispin anymore." Her lips curved into a slight smile as she pulled out a bronze ring from her pocket and handed it to me, as compensation for that day's birthday mishap. I accepted the ring and have worn it ever since. My heart was full of anticipation for the moment we would walk down the aisle together. But that moment ultimately became nothing more than a bubble. In late October, my childhood neighbor and close friend passed away unexpectedly. With my aunt's family distant, holidays left the house feeling empty, save for my neighbor's occasional companionship. His departure left a void in my heart. On the day of the memorial service, I curled up alone in my cramped flat. Loneliness engulfed me like a tide, and suddenly I desperately wanted to see Bronte Carlyle. I hastily threw on a coat and rushed to her posh apartment. But there, I stumbled upon a scene that shattered me. Bronte embracing Crispin Neville, who had just showered and wore only a towel. She was gently patting his shoulder, her voice soft and comforting. "It's all right, Crispin." Bronte's eyes were filled with tenderness. Her tone as warm as autumn sunshine. Felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I stood frozen, my gaze drifting to the shattered pottery mug on the table. It was the birthday gift I'd stayed up all night making. Now it lay in pieces like a silent mockery. Emotions surged within me, anger and pain intertwined. I stepped forward to pick up the broken pieces. Only then did Bronte notice me. She released Crispin and turned to ask, "Ewart, what brings you here?" I bent down to gather the shards, ignoring her. She grabbed my arm and explained, "The mug fell accidentally. Crispin nearly got scalded. Let's forget about this one. I'll get you a new one. All right?" I kept my eyes down, shaking off her hand. Without a word, I ran out the door. Bronte caught up with me by the fountain outside the apartment building. She stared at my face and asked, "Ewart, what's wrong with you?" I glared at her, unable to contain my anger any longer. I could ignore others' gossip, but not Bronte. Her every move, every glance, could send my heart racing. Yet there she stood, acting as if nothing was amiss. "Bronte, do you really care about me?" She hesitated, her eyes flickering and her ears turning red. "Why are you asking this?" I was desperate for an answer, one that would help me make some decisions. "Do you care about me?" But she chose to evade. "There are people watching, Ewart. Let's talk about this later." Later? No need. Let's clear things up right now. Why could she comfort Crispin so tenderly, yet offer me not a single kind word? My heart ached as if pricked by needles. I gritted my teeth and opened my arms, longing to embrace her, to numb myself with her softness. But she held my shoulders firmly, her tone serious. "Not here in public, Ewart." Before she could finish, Crispin's voice cut in. "Bronte." Crispin, now dressed, ran over breathlessly and naturally took Bronte's arm. The scene was like a splash of cold water to my face. I let out a bitter laugh and blurted out, "Right, you and I have to mind our image, unlike your little brother here, who can hug you fresh out of the shower without worrying about gossip." "Ewart Quayle," Bronte interrupted, shocked and angry. A few passers-by began to whisper due to my outburst. Crispin swayed, his face flushing again. The picture of innocence. Bronte grew anxious, her face darkening ominously as she grabbed my wrist. "Stop talking nonsense. It's just a mug. I'll replace it. Leave Crispin out of this." Her tone carried a warning, her grip painful on my wrist. But the pain in my heart ran deeper. Seeing how she protected Crispin, I forced a smile. "Am I talking nonsense? Or are you two feeling guilty?" I saw with my own eyes slap. A sharp sound cut off my words. Bronte spoke coldly. "Ewart Quayle, when will you stop?" I was stunned. The burning sensation on my cheek left my mind blank. In all our years together, minor squabbles were inevitable. But for her to raise her hand against me for someone else's sake changed the nature of the problem entirely. A glimmer of triumph flashed in Crispin's eyes as he softly called out, "Bronte, don't do this." He put on a facade of kindness, offering me his pity. Bronte looked at him, her eyes soft with affection. Then, tugging at his sleeve, she led him away, as if to say I wasn't worth his compassion. I stood frozen, watching their silhouettes grow distant until they disappeared from view. Only then did tears blur the world before me. From that day on, Rumors spread like wildfire in our university WhatsApp group. Everyone said I had been completely abandoned by Bronte Carlyle, with no hope of redemption. The Carlyle Group made no further mention of engagement plans. My heart turned to ashes. I opened my phone and deleted the photo of us taken on the university grounds during our student days. Then I sent her a text, declaring our relationship permanently severed. After that, I packed my bags, left my hometown, and came to Brighton, this small city shrouded in sea mist. For years, I didn't set foot in my hometown. It wasn't until I ran into my aunt today that those memories came flooding back like a tidal wave. But I stood firm like a rock on the shore, unmoved. It was meaningless now. My aunt fell silent for a moment, scrutinizing my expression before saying with a smile, You're still holding a grudge against Bronte, aren't you? I've heard about that incident too. It was just a heated argument between young people. Isn't it time to let it go? I smiled faintly. I got over it long ago. Bronte Carlyle, who had once been inseparable from me, got engaged to Crispin Neville the second year after I left. And I now have a wife and son. We've long since become strangers. Seeing my calm demeanor, my aunt nodded and said, It's good that you've moved on. She paused, then added, Actually, Bronte still has feelings for you. On the day of her engagement to Crispin, she said herself that if you came back for her, she'd be willing to rekindle your relationship. Rekindling an old flame? Was it really on the day of her engagement to Crispin Neville that she said it? I'm starting to feel sorry for Crispin. I got married 3 years ago, and my son is already 2 years old. Do you expect me to play house with Bronte Carlyle? Bringing my family along? What? You're married? My cousin's eyes widened in disbelief. Aunt also looked as if she'd been struck by lightning, hesitating before she spoke. I thought you could never get over Bronte Carlyle. How did this? The news came so suddenly that both of them stood there, speechless for a long moment. I said calmly, Come with me. I'll introduce you to Aubrey. Aubrey is my son. When we got home, he was flying a kite in the yard below. Seeing my aunt and cousin, he tilted his head and asked, Are you here to see Mummy? I shook my head. No, Aubrey. This is your great-aunt and your cousin. Hello, great-aunt. Hello, cousin. Aubrey chirped. Aunt was taken aback. Is this really your son? Both of them looked bewildered until they saw him with their own eyes and had no choice but to believe what I'd said. I smiled, patted Aubrey's head, and went inside to fetch an old wooden box from the back of the cupboard. I handed it to my cousin. Please take this back and give it to Bronte Carlyle. My cousin asked curiously, What's inside? I replied nonchalantly, Just some old things. When I left my hometown, I angrily deleted our photos together, but I couldn't bear to throw away some small trinkets she had given me. The box contained a bronze badge we had chosen together during our university days. Bronte had given it to me on her 19th birthday, saying it was to celebrate our 2-year anniversary of knowing each other. Now time has moved on. She has her path and I have my family. It's time for this badge to be returned to its original owner. My expression remained neutral as my cousin awkwardly refrained from asking further questions, only saying, Do you want to tell Bronte Carlyle about your marriage as well? I paused for a moment, then said casually, It doesn't matter whether she knows or not. Anyway, once she sees what's in the box, she should understand my stance. There are no more ties between us. Aunt sighed, her face full of regret, as if she had just witnessed a perfect match sink to the bottom of the sea. She couldn't help but ask, Ewart, can you really let go? Can you really let go of so many years of feelings just like that? I nodded. I'm content. At first, it might have been out of spite towards Bronte Carlyle. But later, getting married was a choice I made willingly. Aunt Winifred was left speechless. She and her cousin departed with the box. 2 weeks later, news finally reached me through the grapevine. My cousin messaged me on WhatsApp, saying she had given the box to Bronte. It was on Guy Fawkes night at Bronte's birthday dinner. My cousin handed her the box. When Bronte opened it and saw what was inside, she froze, her eyes reddening. She asked my cousin where I was now. My cousin told her truthfully. He's married now. Unexpectedly, this short sentence left the illustrious Miss Carlyle stunned, her face as white as paper, hand clutching her chest as she coughed softly. I hadn't expected her reaction to be so intense. Even more surprising was that she came to Brighton in person. That day, wind and snow raged. A solitary figure stood below, as forlorn as an abandoned lighthouse by the sea. Aubrey pushed open the door and called to me. "Dad, someone's here to see you." "Who is it?" I asked, puzzled. I peeked out curiously, inadvertently meeting a pair of familiar eyes. Bronte stood there with an umbrella, gazing down at Aubrey before looking up at me, her movements stiffening. Time had flowed like water. Everything felt like a lifetime ago. She had gained a certain gravitas since our student days, but her eyes were still as clear as the sea. Her lips moved slightly as she said softly, "It's been a long time, Ewart." I frowned, knowing I couldn't avoid this, and responded calmly, "Miss Carlyle, what a surprise. Old acquaintances meeting again." She still called me by my first name, while I only had a cold, formal address for her. A flicker of sadness passed through her eyes as she looked down at Aubrey and murmured, "Is this your son?" Aubrey, intimidated by her stare, hid behind me. I picked him up, pretending not to notice the tremor in her voice, and said evenly, "Yes, he is." Snowflakes fell on the edge of her umbrella, forming a thin layer. Bronte's face was as white as snow, almost blending into the surroundings. For a moment, she seemed to have lost her soul. After a long while, she asked in a low voice, "Why?" I replied indifferently, "There's no particular reason. Getting married and having children is quite ordinary." "Ordinary," she repeated, emotions swirling in her eyes as she forced a bitter smile. Aubrey peeked out curiously and asked, "Who are you, miss?" Bronte stared at him, her eyes suddenly reddening. "I'm an old friend of your dad's." "Old friend?" Aubrey didn't understand, tilting his head in confusion. I explained, "Someone I knew a long time ago." "Oh," Aubrey said, still not quite grasping it, his big eyes fixed on her, not understanding why this adult looked like she was about to cry. "Ewart." Bronte began to speak again, but I cut her off. "You should go." She froze, watching helplessly as I turned and carried Aubrey back inside. The snow fell heavier, and I showed no intention of inviting her in. She stood in the wind and snow, not moving for a long time. Even after the snow stopped, she hadn't left, her face frozen nearly bloodless. I thought for a moment, not wanting to find someone collapsed at my doorstep in the morning, so I opened the door and asked, "What exactly do you want?" Her gaze followed me, her voice hoarse. "Ewart, do you still hate me?" "Hate me for what I did that day?" Bringing up old matters, I frowned and said, "That's all in the past." "But I can't get past it," she said. "All these years, I've never forgotten." She looked up, and under her umbrella, those eyes that once made me lose myself were still as deep as the sea. Only now I wouldn't waver for her even slightly. Bronte Carlyle stared at my impassive face, her voice tinged with desperation. "What will it take for you to forgive me? Will this do?" She suddenly grabbed my hand, forcing herself to slap her own cheek. The sharp sound cut through the air, her pale skin quickly reddening, and even my palm tingled slightly. But I remained unmoved, coldly uttering two words. "Let go." She refused to release my hand, stubbornly staring at me as if waiting for a ripple of emotion in my heart. I sneered, my lips curling in mockery. "You're hurting me." She froze, finally letting go. She seemed to realize that I would never be moved by her again. I spoke dispassionately. "You shouldn't have come here," I continued. "From the day you got engaged to Crispin Neville, there was no longer any possibility between us. Or did you hope I'd come back to rekindle our old flame?" Her eyes welled up, her voice trembling. "Why not? We've been together since secondary school. We were meant to grow old together. He's no longer yours." A warm voice came from behind. A woman carrying a camera bag approached, giving me a gentle smile. Ewart, I'm back. Seeing her, my face instantly lit up. I quickly ran over and embraced her. Winnie, even though we were married with a child, I still couldn't shake my straightforward nature. Unlike those men who, think they're mature by pretending to be reserved, I always pour out all my feelings unreservedly to the one I love. Fortunately, Winifred Farley is my wife, and she never minds my impulsiveness, nor does she push me away. She opened her arms, steadily allowing me to lift her, a soft curve on her lips. I asked quietly, "Why are you back so early today?" Winifred replied, "The outdoor shoot wrapped up early. The client was very pleased, so I rushed back." She opened her bag and took out a cloth pouch containing 2 freshly baked roast potatoes. "I brought these for you and Aubrey. They're still warm." As she spoke, she looked up at Bronte Carlyle. The 2 women's gazes met, a subtle tension permeating the air as they silently appraised each other. Finally, Winifred smiled first and said, "You must be Miss Carlyle?" Bronte Carlyle stood tall, her business acumen on full display, though the red handprint on her cheek somewhat marred the effect. She stared at Winifred Farley, her tone defiant. "So you're his wife? Not much to look at." Some business acumen, that was. Winifred turned to me, her voice tinged with a playful pout. "Ewart, am I really that disappointing?" I immediately cupped her face in my hands, speaking earnestly. "How could you be? Winnie, you're the most talented photographer in Brighton. Your skills are top-notch, your eye for detail unparalleled, and your grace and poise are second to none. Don't listen to such nonsense." I glared at Bronte, who looked as if she'd suffered a terrible injustice. "Ewart, back in our hometown I had always defended her. When had I ever treated her so coldly in front of others?" Bronte's face turned pale, a flash of jealousy and hatred in her eyes as she looked at Winifred. I stepped forward, sighing. "Thank you for coming to find me, but let's all maintain our dignity. You should go now, Bronte. We have no future together." With that, Winifred and I turned to enter the house, ready to close the door. Bronte panicked, her hand shooting out to brace against the doorframe as she spoke in a low voice. "Wait, let me say a few more things. You don't know, I have so much more to tell you." I took a deep breath, my patience nearly exhausted, and spoke coldly. "What else do you want to say?" She met my icy gaze, her eyes trembling slightly, but no words came out. She understood that, with my personality, anything she said now would be futile. Finally, she let go of the door, her eyes downcast, standing there looking utterly dejected. The door closed, shutting out her lonely figure. Winifred gently brushed the snowflakes from my shoulders, her voice soft. "It's over now." I looked up at her and sighed. I never expected Bronte to follow me here. 5 years ago, when I left our hometown, she had been bitterly disappointed in me, not even uttering a single word to make me stay. Later, she got engaged to Crispin Neville, and I thought she had long since put me out of her mind. Why did she suddenly appear today, looking so lost and forlorn? I hadn't missed the way she looked at Aubrey, as if her heart was breaking. Did she think that all these years she had been faithfully waiting for me? On what grounds? I felt restless, hoping that the ill-fated connection between Bronte Carlyle and me would end here and now. But I was wishful thinking. After learning my address, she sent people to deliver gifts every other day. Expensive belts, cufflinks, watches, coats, models, graphics cards, headphones, fishing gear. She bought and sent me everything a man might like. Of course, except for photography equipment. Even though I returned everything, she wouldn't give up. On the day Winifred Farley went out for a photo shoot, she came again. This time I was smart enough not to open the door, but she climbed up the maintenance ladder next door. I laughed bitterly and said to her, "The mighty head of Carlyle Group, climbing a ladder to get in? Aren't you afraid people will laugh if they find out?" Bronte Carlyle coughed lightly. "I don't care about that." She looked at me intently and said, "I came this time just to ask clearly, why did you marry Winifred Farley? She's just an ordinary photographer. How could she be worthy of you? Did she use some trick to force you to marry her?" As she said this, A cold glint flashed in her eyes, and she continued in a deep voice, "If she really forced you, I won't let her get away with it." I glanced at her with amusement and snorted. "No one forced me. It was my own willing choice." "But she's just a photographer." Bronte Carlyle couldn't accept it. "What do you see in her? What could Winifred Farley have that she, Bronte Carlyle, couldn't match?" She didn't even notice how distorted her expression was at this moment. I shook my head contemptuously. "You've investigated so much. You know she saved my life. Didn't you wonder why I was in mortal danger?" She was stunned. "Why?" My mocking smile deepened. "Actually, I went back home once. After breaking up with her and leaving, it was just a moment of anger. A few months later, I regretted it. Life in Brighton wasn't easy. The sea wind in winter was bone-chilling cold. I rented a small room alone with no family or friends, spending each day either working or staring at the old things she had given me. Each item held a memory. How could I not miss her, looking at these things every day? The anger in my heart gradually extinguished, and I began to recall her kindness to me. I even reflected internally, thinking perhaps I had been too impulsive, that I shouldn't have publicly accused her of having an ambiguous relationship with Crispin Neville. Those words spreading would damage her reputation, so perhaps her anger was understandable? I tried hard to convince myself, to comfort myself, and couldn't help but secretly return home. Walking on the familiar streets, I was still planning, telling myself I couldn't let her see that I had softened so quickly. She would have to apologize first, and distance herself from Crispin Neville. As I was scheming, I walked to the front of her house, only to see colorful flags fluttering at her doorstep, as lively as if it were a holiday. I was stunned and asked an old man by the road whose family was celebrating. Perhaps because I was tired from the journey and unrecognizable, the old man casually said, "Who else could it be? The Carlyle girl. Today is her engagement day. The celebration has blocked the whole road." I froze on the spot, my ears buzzing, unable to believe what I had heard. After a long while, I managed to squeeze out a sentence. Who is she getting engaged to? Wasn't I supposed to be her boyfriend? Oh, right, I had already broken up with her. A suffocating pain surged in my chest. I stared wide-eyed, almost unable to breathe. Only one thought remained in my mind. Bronte Carlyle really didn't want me anymore. I had only been gone for 5 months, and she was already engaged to someone else. She had never tried to find me, yet here I was, coming back on my own. I wanted to reconcile with her, but she no longer needed me. Then I saw Bronte Carlyle walk out. A lavishly decorated car was parked by the road, and she reached out to help a man step out of the car. Ha, of course it's the Carlyle Group heiress's engagement. The man was just her accessory. That figure looked somewhat familiar, and people around remarked, "Of course it's Crispin Neville, who else could it be?" I had once imagined my engagement to Bronte Carlyle, just like this scene before me. She in a gown, me in a suit, though a bit embarrassed. I would wait for her to take my hand, leading me towards a new life. But when this day arrived, I was just an outsider. I didn't have the courage to step forward and question her, nor did I dare to let her see me, because I was the one who first suggested breaking up. I was the one who left home in anger. I thought she would come after me and apologize, but she just replaced me with another partner, as if my presence or absence didn't matter at all. With Crispin Neville by her side, why would she need to wait for me to come back? Continuing to pester her would only make me look foolish. Time to leave. Unexpectedly, on my way back to Brighton, I encountered an accident. To avoid the car in front that had suddenly braked, I swerved sharply. I lost control of the vehicle, and it slid towards a steep cliff at the side of the road. Winifred happened to spot me at the bottom of the cliff. She was photographing the seascape nearby at the time and coincidentally saved me. Otherwise, I might have died such a pitiful death. It would have seemed like I died for love. Even though I had nearly died, I still couldn't move on. I spent my days in a daze, unable to eat or sleep. Seeing me in this state day after day, Winifred took me to her photography studio. There, people of all kinds came to have their pictures taken every day. Some were beaming with joy, others were nervous and uneasy. Despite this, they all strived to capture moments worth cherishing. Compared to them, I realized I was wallowing in self-pity over a minor ailment. I stayed there for less than 6 months before I became too ashamed to continue wallowing. Winifred not only saved my life but also pulled me out of the fog of confusion and pain. She was always busy but never complained of fatigue, going out to shoot during the day and keeping me company at night. Even if I didn't understand gratitude, I knew I should repay her kindness. After my body recovered, I stayed to help her organize equipment and edit photos. As time passed, feelings developed. We both had affection for each other, and things progressed naturally. We got married. Later, we had Aubrey and settled in Brighton, where we met my aunt's family. Old acquaintances kept appearing, but I was no longer the Ewart Quayle I used to be. I wouldn't be moved by Bronte Carlyle anymore, nor would I experience the emotional roller coaster I once did because of her words and actions. To me now, she was nothing more than a stranger on the street. I recounted the past to her, only wanting her to understand that I had completely let go. Bronte, we were once lovers, and I did love you deeply, but that's all in the past now. You have Crispin as your fiancé, and I have found my safe harbor. What's the point of you continuing to cling to the past? After hearing my words, Bronte's face grew increasingly pale, as if her soul had been drained. She murmured, "So you did go back to your hometown?" I didn't understand why she reacted this way, but I nodded. "And I saw you and Crispin get engaged. Miss Carlyle, why did our relationship end so badly back then? It was because of Crispin, wasn't it? What were you hiding from me back then? It was Crispin again, wasn't it? Now we're on separate paths, each living our own lives. Why are you unhappy about this?" I calmly explained the cause and effect of the situation, but her eyes reddened slightly as she shook her head. "Things aren't as you think they are." Her lips quivered as if she had something difficult to say. With a bitter smile and complex emotions, she said, "If I told you that I was also trying to provoke you, would you believe me?" I was stunned, a hint of confusion flashing in my eyes. Provoke me? What did she mean? Was she trying to say that her engagement to Crispin was just to get a reaction from me? Under my gaze, the corners of her mouth turned up slightly, and there seemed to be tears glistening in her eyes. She spoke slowly. "Ewart, do you believe that you're the only person I've ever loved, and that I only wanted to spend the rest of my life with you?" Her bitter smile was tinged with tears, as if hiding endless regret. She looked at me intently, her tone soft yet profound, like a long overdue confession. "Ewart, I never looked down on you. Perhaps others might think that a deep, calm, or elegant and steady man is more worthy of commitment. But Bronte Carlyle was only infatuated with that lively, vibrant young man full of energy. His name was Ewart Quayle, and he was her first love. When he turned 25, they were supposed to be engaged for life. He didn't know that his girlfriend had been dreaming of that day for years. But that day eventually turned into a bubble. Life always has too many missed opportunities, and deep feelings don't always guarantee a lasting relationship. They were used to joking around and bickering, constantly arguing yet unable to part. They thought their relationship was as solid as a rock, but in reality, it was as fragile as morning dew. Bronte wasn't unaware that her parents preferred Crispin Neville and had reservations about Ewart Quayle. She also wasn't oblivious to the fact that Crispin's appearance made Ewart's life increasingly difficult, with more and more people belittling him. She just felt that this had nothing to do with Crispin. He had no ill intentions. And as long as she protected Ewart, it didn't matter if others didn't like him. Her love was enough. She failed to notice that she, too, was being subtly influenced, gradually distancing herself from Ewart. She even raised her hand against him when he was heartbroken. That slap wasn't hard. She thought it wouldn't hurt him much. But men never shed a tear from physical pain. They only cry from a broken heart. Bronte told herself not to be soft-hearted, that she needed to teach him a lesson. She publicly accused him of having an unclear relationship with Crispin, thinking she had been too lenient with him before. She thought of letting him cool off for a few days, but she didn't expect him to give her a big surprise. When she received that breakup text, Bronte's eyes burned with anger. What infuriated her even more was the message he left. Bronte Carlyle, I hope you and Crispin grow old together. Was it sarcasm, mockery, or self-deprecation? She was fuming, and with Crispin and her family's persuasion, she deliberately ignored Ewart. She was waiting for him to come back and apologize. But Ewart left their hometown without a trace. Bronte nearly smashed her phone in anger, and her parents took the opportunity to bring up her marriage. They suggested that since things were over with the Carlyle boy, she should consider Crispin. She was stunned, having no intention of pursuing anything with Crispin. But if Ewart heard she was getting engaged, wouldn't he be unable to hold back? Surely he would come running back to reconcile. So, in a fit of rage, she nodded in agreement. She even deliberately posted engagement photos on social media and kept a screenshot of his sarcastic text message. But she still held onto her anger and didn't go looking for Ewart until the autumn of the following year. She didn't know that I had moved to Brighton and hadn't heard about her engagement at all. She thought I truly despised her, not even caring about her engagement. Bronte almost recklessly got engaged to Crispin, as if gambling on a hopeless game. She never noticed that I was right there on the street corner, watching her walk arm in arm with someone else. First love at university, a blossoming of emotions. Due to a moment of impulsiveness, we lost each other, our paths never to cross again in this life. On her engagement day, Bronte Carlyle still harbored an unrealistic hope in her heart. She even declared in front of the guests that if Ewart Carlyle were to return, she would rekindle their old flame. But I never looked back. This time, my stubbornness took me far away. For years later, her cousin handed her a wooden box. Inside were the badge and ring she had given me, along with football match tickets we had bought together and old photographs. She could barely contain her excitement, thinking I had finally resurfaced, and eagerly asked where I was. Her cousin hesitated for a moment before answering. He's married now. Like a bolt from the blue, it shattered all her fantasies in an instant. Bronte didn't notice herself clutching her chest and coughing softly, her fingertips stained with blood, as she asked in a low voice, "Where is he?" University of Brighton. Snowflakes drifted down, the sky once again veiled in white. After saying she had never despised me, she fell into an eerie silence, her expression alternating between gloomy and bright. Inside the house, little Aubrey was startled awake by a night terror. I walked into the room and picked him up, gently comforting him. Bronte gazed at me through the window pane, her expression gradually calming. "I'm sorry for disturbing you," she said. Slightly surprised, seeing that she seemed to have given up, I replied nonchalantly, "Then I won't see you out." She lowered her head and responded, "All right, I'll be heading back in a few days." She hesitated for a moment before asking, "May I hold Aubrey?" I frowned slightly, wariness showing in my eyes. She quickly explained, "Don't misunderstand. Just think of it as holding a friend's child. Is that not all right?" As she spoke, she looked at Aubrey, her eyes full of envy. If not for those events, would she have to ask my permission to hold her own child? Aubrey stared at her, reaching out his little hands. "Auntie, hold." He couldn't possibly understand the complicated affairs between adults, only instinctively sensing a person's sadness. Bronte's eyes lit up, and she looked at me pleadingly. I sighed and handed Aubrey to her. "Be careful. You need to support him like this." I showed her how to hold a child. She gazed at his little face, which, despite his young age, bore a resemblance to my features. She looked at him intently, her eyes moistening, yet a faint smile playing on her lips. Aubrey touched her face curiously and asked, "Auntie, why are you crying?" "Because I let down someone who loved me deeply. If not for my mistake, perhaps my child with him would be about your age, no, at least 5 months older." 5 months. A pointed reference to time, yet also a regret etched in time due to its passage. "All right then, You've seen him, you've held him. It's time to go. Don't send those things anymore either, lest I have to explain to her whether I'm hiding secret funds. She nodded bitterly. I won't. When Winifred Farley returned home, she learned that Bronte Carlyle had visited. She quickly asked me if there were any issues. She's gone, all gone. It's over. Completely over, I said. I don't believe you, she replied. I smiled at her jealous expression. Don't worry. Her family won't let her have anything more to do with me either. The Carlyle parents had always disliked me. Before, when I was lost in the throes of love, I never realized how cruel reality could be. Now I understand. If it weren't for them, how could my relationship with Bronte have dragged on without progress? Until Crispin Neville interfered? Those rumors praising Crispin and belittling me were deliberately spread by someone to force me to back off. Bronte's parents had really gone to great lengths. A cold sneer crossed my lips as I pushed the old memories from my hometown out of my mind. Little did I know she had a huge row with her family after she returned. She broke off her engagement with Crispin Neville, citing irreconcilable differences. Crispin stood at her family's doorstep, his usual gentle demeanor gone, his face red with anger. All these years of engagement, did you treat me like a pet? Playing with me when you felt like it, ignoring me when you didn't? Bronte Carlyle? Are you even human? In the end, Crispin left. After all, you can't fight City Hall. I was in Brighton, running a successful photography business with Winifred, while little Aubrey grew up beside us. Winter came again, with snow falling heavily. Aubrey leaned on the windowsill, peering outside. Dad, I think I saw someone familiar, he said. I laughed. Not the roast potato vendor again, is it? Aubrey blushed and shook his head. No, this person had very bright eyes, like ocean waves. The description reminded me of Bronte Carlyle. I asked doubtfully, Are you sure you're not mistaken? Aubrey wasn't certain. Maybe. I'm not sure. The snow was too heavy. He couldn't tell if those eyes were just an illusion. Seeing him still staring out the window, I called out resignedly, Stop looking and come eat dinner. The warm aroma of food wafted from the kitchen. Outside, the figure standing in the snow seemed to smile before turning to leave. Snow covered her umbrella, and fine lines had appeared on her no longer youthful face. Only her eyes remained as clear as the merging of sea and sky.